into this presentation. Right before the Q&A, we're going to talk about the role of a consultant versus an architect, a designer, engineer, material manufacturer, applicator, and a general contractor. But let me begin with my background. I started out as a roofing contractor. I had my contractor's license when I was, I don't know, maybe 19 or 20 in Batavia, New York. After I worked for pretty much the top roofing company in Batavia, we had done the largest torch-applied modified bitumen roofing job in the country in New York. This would be in 1984, 85. It was approximately 10,000 roofing squares. So times that by 10 to get your square footage. We went over numerous layers of roofing, and every 100 square feet we had to cut out one-way moisture vents. So we had to cut through the existing roof down to the wood deck and install a one-way moisture vent because there wasn't money to tear the roof off for this. I was a flashing specialist, so I had to stay away or stay ahead of the Dragon Wagon. Dragon Wagon is a multi-torch wagon that pulls rolls of modified bitumen, and you'll install a square, a roofing square, in approximately 5 minutes with that device. It did leave a headlap. My job was to come back, torch all the headlaps, and stay ahead of the Dragon Wagon. If I failed to do so, I was once picked up by the throat to where my toes were 6 inches off the ground because I missed a headlap. So yeah, that was my motivation. I also did all the base flashings, so vertical transitions, deck to wall, and flashed all of the penetrations. Interestingly enough, these are all the areas that typically fail on a low slope roof system, particularly a torch down system. Torch down systems, if I were to throw a dart at that type of system, it would be the interface to sheet metal. Sheet metal and the bituminous materials heat and cool at a differential rate. The expansion and contraction of the sheet metal versus the torch applied modified bitumen almost always compromises the seal. So we have to envelope all of the sheet metal, prime it, secure it, and strip it in with additional plies. And that's essentially what you do with hot roofs now, and other single ply membranes, which will have a clad metal. From a roofing contractor, I came to California and was enlightened to the fact that you get paid just to watch other people work. So I immediately, within a week of arriving in California, I was hired by independent roofing consultants who was at the time and probably still is one of the top quality control inspection type firms. They have national clients. I stayed with them for a couple years and ultimately graduated to junior consultant from a quality control inspector. I did my own thing for a while after that, and then went to work for Ernie Orchard Roofing Consultants. I consider him one of my mentors, and I got my feet wet in the whole construction defect arena and gave expert witness testimony numerous times. I participated in a jury trial, or I'm sorry, a trial by judge for construction defect cases. And really got my feet wet with the whole construction defect industry, which hopefully is calming down a bit as the learning curve, I think, is approaching the end. Now people know pretty much what you need to do to avoid court. One of those things entails hiring the right subs. Being that I'm speaking in front of a GC right now, I cannot stress the importance of hiring a qualified subcontractor that's approved by all the popular material manufacturers, has had litigation experience, and knows what's going to end you up in court and what isn't. I'm sure I can fire off with some names. You all know who they are. And it's ironic. People will pay whatever it costs for interior finishes, for granite countertops and marble floors and faux finishes on the walls and all kinds of costly lighting features. But when it comes to weather-resistant barriers, things you don't see, it's almost like insurance for your car. You're shopping around for the absolute lowest price, and then you wonder when you don't get any follow-up service. And it's sort of the same thing with hiring the subs. So it also makes the job of the consultant and the quality control inspector a lot easier to accomplish when you hire qualified subs. Unfortunately, you don't really know what you're going to get until someone's actually accomplishing the work. You know, you'll have a sales staff on one end, and then you'll have the applicators on the other, and supervision. And for it all to come together is what makes a good company, what makes a good applicator for roofing and waterproofing. And ironically enough, there are 2 to 3 waterproofing applicators in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Malibu area that do probably 80% of the high-end work. And I don't need to, well, fucking Weathermasters, Kazimi. Interestingly enough, both of those companies have had offshoots. So you have U&M, which is an offshoot of Kazimi. If you contracted with Kazimi 3 years ago, you would have gotten U&M. If you contracted with Weathermasters 3 years ago, you would have gotten S&S. So it sort of levels the playing field between those 2 top-tier applicators. And Milo Marquez, APC Coatings, he's on my short list. I have a short list of about 15 to 20 applicators for roofing and waterproofing, and everyone we just mentioned is on it. WICR has been around for a long time. They're on my list. Matt Bancroft, of course. Spectra Company. Spectra Company started out as a painter and segued into waterproofing. They also do a lot of restoration. They were a bidder on the Frank Lloyd Wright project, the Ennis House, which I was involved in the restoration of initially in the beginning. Gave him some pointers on the water intrusion. Interesting project. You have textile block that's actually quarried from that hillside where the project was built. Over the years, they've tried all kinds of topically applied coatings to mitigate water intrusion, water infiltration. Unfortunately, they put a Sarnafel roof, PVC Sarnafel roof, which is pretty much the most expensive roof you could buy on the structure. Only problem was the roof didn't extend all the way out the parapet walls to cover the walls. So you had an area, and this was for aesthetic reasons. The design committee was involved with the place. They didn't want to see any evidence of a roof on the structure from any angle surrounding the structure. Ergo, we had our roof about an inch away from the edge of the textile block wall. So all the joints for the block construction were capillaries for water infiltration. And you go inside the building and it appears to be leaking, no rhyme, no reason, from all over the place through the walls, and nobody thought to look at the dimensions of the roof. Pretty much every construction defect will fall into the categories of dimensions, quantities, bond or adhesion, and thickness. And if you've missed the mark on any of those, chances are you're working with a construction defect. Majority of construction defects are going to occur at balcony decks, just because you have so many complex intersections where different trades are coming together. And as you know, a trade is motivated to finish their scope of work. If something's not done properly that they have to cover, sometimes that's not an issue for them. That's unfortunate. Everyone is chasing a buck, and everyone needs to produce a certain amount of product a day. And if substrate conditions aren't ready, instead of sending their guys home or filing an RFI or making a phone call, they'll try to do the best they can to get their volume of work done for the day. And it's unfortunate, but I think that and the lack of sequencing or proper sequencing are just 2 major aspects of what creates these construction defects. Roofs balcony decks, below grade waterproofing, under slab waterproofing, and no, a 15 mil visqueen or 6 mil visqueen is not an under slab waterproofing, contrary to popular belief. I mean, if you're on top of a hill with no surrounding hillsides depositing any water under your, but that's pretty much the only case.
But that's different from Stego, right?
Yeah, Stego wrap, the difference with a Stego wrap type product is all your seams are taped and sealed, and it's terminated at the perimeters using a termination bar and an accessory polyurethane sealant. All the penetrations are taped and treated, so it's a big difference. And generally, an applicator will drop a water stop just outside of their term bar as another added safeguard. And speaking of slab and wall and footing interface, much prefer to have your footings done and even your walls and then drop in your slab. That divorces the under slab waterproofing from the below grade waterproofing on the walls.
Fix the microphone. People were having a hard time hearing you.
No,
we're good to go.
Now. Fixed now. Good.
Advance.
So,
sorry to interrupt, but since you're on that subject, just expand on what you just said for the benefit of separating, you putting these walls slab after, and the benefit of separating those.
Benefit of separating your under slab waterproofing from your below grade waterproofing at your walls is, first off, a lot of those systems are, they're not the same system. And to marry a bentonite waterproofing, which is basically like clay carpeting, with a fluid applied polyurethane is tricky. To marry a bentonite, a non-backed, a non-faced bentonite membrane like Setco Voltex or Carlisle Miraclay, excellent products, trying to marry them to a self-adhered membrane or trying to marry them to a fluid applied membrane can be difficult. And oftentimes you'll have two different manufacturers. Because you have some manufacturers that really specialize in the fluid applied polyurethanes, such as Tremco. I really like Tremco 250 GC. You can put this product down on green concrete. You don't have to wait 28 days. You can put it down in single lifts up to 40 or 50 mils each. So you could get your 120 mils in 3 coats. And believe me, after 3 passes over the same area, you got it right. It's almost like the assurance of a built-up, old-school hot roof. We got a guy going over the same area 3 or 4 times. So if you miss it the first couple, it's a synthetic rubber. It's polyurethane. It's moisture cured, and it's single component. You add a shot glass, a capful of water to a 5-gallon bucket, mix it up with a paddle mixer, and you're ready to go.
Okay, so you've got me a little scared about something right now. So I just had a...
I'll stop recording.
We just did a project, or we're in the process of doing a project, where we had a 2-foot thick mat slab with the wall coming down on top of that, the mat slab being part of the foundation as well as the slab. So we put a 15 mil underneath that, wrapped it up the sides, and then built on top of that so that we have an overlap on top of that. So you're telling me, and it's on a hillside condition, so you're saying that's really not good enough at this point.
It can be done. It can be done. Who's your applicator?
APC. Milo.
Yeah, Milo. I
You did a really good job with it, but still, if it's a product that we can't use because it doesn't hold up, I want to know that.
No, I have a pretty good confidence level in Milo Marquis' APC coatings. I don't think he would have done anything that's going to afford liability on his part.
No.
And he would have spoke up and told you.
No, he did a beautiful job on it. It's just that if it's, no matter how good a job it is, if it's not the right product, it's not the right product.
Well, and adding to what Greg says is that the majority of the projects we are doing, it's no longer a foundation and a wall and then pour the slab. It's just a mat slab. It's just one continuous foundation. And then you build on top of it. And that's how we have to do it.
For mat slabs, I like a dual system.
And I'm going to go into this in greater detail when we talk about pools and water features over habitable space.
Yeah, so.
So under your initial pour, under your mat slab, you could do a bentonite system, roll that up, tie that into a sheet good or fluid applied with a manufacturer's blessing. Tremco will give you a custom detail for that application, for marrying fluid applied with their Paraseal, or even a sheet applied. The advantage with Tremco under slab bentonite, there's an advantage and there's a disadvantage. The advantage is it has a high density polyethylene backing, and the bentonite is impregnated, fused onto the backing using adhesives. The problem with Paraseal bentonite is it has a high density polyethylene backing, and the bentonite is fused to the polyethylene backing, meaning if the Paraseal is exposed to water a couple of times, it will have a tendency, the bentonite granules will have a tendency to wash off the HDPE sheet and leave you with just a sheet of plastic instead of the bentonite you paid for. So that's a disadvantage. The advantage of having the high density polyethylene backing is when you're rolling up from the mat slab and onto the below grade wall, the high density polyethylene smooth side is facing the applicator. So it's easily married with a peel and stick membrane from that point. Just add a term bar, peel and stick on the top of it, and go. And again, Tremco has published details for marriage with the fluid applied, which is even easier. You basically terminate it, use a trowel grade 250 GC or Vulcum 201, and continue with your fluid applied polyurethane from that point. Now, the dual system. You do everything, all the aforementioned, and after the mat slab's complete and cured out, let's do a fluid applied polyurethane on the mat slab before you pour your 4-inch finish slab. That's an added safeguard against water infiltration. If you're doing hardwood flooring or anything that's going to require a number on your calcium chloride test to be, under 4, under 5 pounds of water vapor per 24 hours per 100 square feet, and they give you a neat little formula to plug all that in. Calcium chloride is the little stuff you find in your luggage. It says "do not eat." That's calcium chloride. It's extremely moisture sensitive and will absorb moisture. So you get they give you a little petri dish, basically a little plastic dish, which is filled up with the calcium chloride. You weigh that, get a number, and then you put that product in an area of the slab, and you put a plastic dome over it, and you monitor it after 72 hours, and you weigh it again. And then you plug that number into the formula, and it'll give you a number, hopefully under 10, 1 through 10 or 1 through 20, that'll tell you how many pounds of moisture per 100 square feet per 24 hours that slab is emitting in vapor drive.
Interesting.
Now, you can put the fluid applied polyurethanes over something relatively wet if it's the 250 GC, if it's a moisture cured. For between slab applications, I really like CIM products. So we're talking CIM 800, CIM 1000. Here are the advantages of CIM products, and I really wish Tremco would get a product like this going because their product line is expansive. CIM only makes CIM. They don't make anything else.
So this is to go on top, the positive side of the slab prior to finish.
Prior to the finish slab, absolutely. And I like to do the same thing with pool shells. Shell in a shell. Do your structural shell, waterproof that, do a sand broadcast, or do a low profile drainage board, and then pour another shell over it, and then waterproof that with a flexible cementitious like Membrane C by Miracoat, and add BC Pro, which is an acronym for Bond Coat Pro, and then you can do a conventional pool plaster or a thin set tile application from that point. That is an absolute bulletproof Aston Martin way to do a pool shell in shell over
How thick is the shell within the shell?
Shells within shells, you can have an 8 to 12-inch structural shell, and the minimum thickness for an encapsulation shell will be 2 inches, 2.5, 3 inches, 4 inches preferred, obviously, because it'll have more downward pressure. You can shoot it, or you can shotcrete, generally a shotcrete, and this is really perfect. How rough the shotcrete is, and that rough abraded profile is a perfect profile for membrane C application, which is the second in the 1-2 punch. You do not want water intrusion over habitable space from a pool. Number one, jurisdictions will disallow it over time. If it happens too much, it's going to be illegal. You'll never ever be able to do a pool over habitable space. It's already happened in Manhattan Beach.
The ones we're doing with those water features, the shelf that's underneath. Yeah.
It's already happening in Manhattan Beach. If they aren't completely comfortable with your design, you're not going to put a pool over habitable space. They're just not going to let you do it.
What's the brand again?
Okay, so the order, I really like CIM 800 or 1000. This is a fluid applied polyurethane, but it's unique. They probably guard that formula like Willy Wonka guards the everlasting gobstopper, you know? It's a fluid applied polyurethane, but it has a much higher shore, so it's harder. Also, believe it or not, it's asphalt compatible.
Oh, wow.
It's asphalt compatible. There are only 2 products I'm even aware of that are worth their salt that are fluid applied polyurethanes that are asphalt compatible. One of them is Tremco Volcom 801, and the other is CIM 800 / 1000.
Volcom?
Tremco, Tremco is Volcom. And the other is CIM. You know, I really like Tremco because they have a huge product line. It's an RPM company. You know, if you're familiar with that acronym, they own all kinds of things. They're like BASF or Dow Corning, or Georgia Pacific. They're huge. They're huge. They own all kinds of different. So you can get single source manufacturer back warranties that are worth more than just getting another bucket of goop after your project has failed and you've got an angry homeowner with a battery of lawyers coming after you.
Can you expand at some point on the value and process of having a manufacturer's rep inspection over the applicator, and what sort of levels of warranty that might add, or what level is sufficient for us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Repeat the question. I don't know if I picked it up very well.
What the gentleman asked is, what are the advantages of having a manufacturer's rep actively involved with the project, providing details, coming out and looking at the assembly at critical times, and then providing, their most staunch warranty that they possibly can. There's certainly advantage to that. At the end of the day, you still got to fight it out in court if it's a big enough issue, and there's a substantial monetary penalty associated with it.
Can't hurt, right?
It can't hurt. I think the biggest advantage of doing that is it just shows a highly evolved level of due diligence on your part. You're working within the confines of the system. Yeah, manufacturer's warranties aren't great, but you're working within the confines of that system, and you're doing everything in your power to make sure you're getting a good product and you're getting a good job. Mm-hmm. So having the party that manufactures the product actively involved in overseeing the application is an absolute step in the right direction. Is it the save-all of any construction defect lawsuit? No, because they're going to be sitting in court across the table from you, and they may be on your side, they may not be, and that may change in the same case, depending on the direction that the case is going. But just doing it is certainly a step in the right direction, and it shows a level of concern and due diligence on your part.
What about issuing corrective measures? I mean, do they ever show up and issue corrective measures?
They do. And, here's another, I'm touching on item 6 here, roles of the consultant, architect, designer, material manufacturer, etc., kind of jumping around here, but Manufacturers are going to be much more comfortable when you have a consultant they're familiar with on the project, as opposed to not. If it's just you and your subs building something, you're going to get put on the bottom of the to-do list.
We always use.
Do you know any of those good guys by chance?
Oh, I do. I do. But because the way they look at it is, okay, a consultant. I'm on a $500 million home right now. It's up at Ariel Way, Los Angeles City. It's 944 Ariel. It's Niles Place.
$500 million.
Yeah, it's going to be $500 million. That's what they're shooting for, the asking price.
How's that turning out?
It looks fantastic.
Wow, good.
One of the reasons, Kazemi's out there. Kazemi's out there. He's paying 20, 30% more than anybody else to have a top tier contractor out there doing the waterproofing. That's smart. It's smart. We're using CIM 1000, the very best polyurethane in terms of for that application for shell and shell. We're using Membrane C by Miracoat, using all the stuff I like. And if I have my way, they'll be doing Prosoco fluid applied as a building envelope, which I'm sure you guys are chomping at the bit to hear about.
Yeah,
fluid applied that everybody's doing now.
If you want at some point, if that fits into your agenda, talk about that.
I can jump into that right now since we brought it up.
Explain what it is. For those.
Okay, Prosoco is it's a proprietary chemical fluid applied, still a liquid rubber type product. It goes directly on the shear wall in place of one of your layers of paper or one of your layers of Tyvek or Tycar. Here's what's really good about this stuff. If you have a breach in the building envelope, outside of it, meaning the single layer of paper or the peel and stick around your window or the penetration they did for an electrical socket, we have some sort of mechanism of failure and water is introduced behind the plaster wall assembly or behind the corrugated metal or behind the decorative wood siding or behind the stone or what have you. These construction defect cases are fueled by resultant damage. There's a resultant damage requirement for a litigant, for an action to garner any real funds. Nobody's going to get any money if there isn't any damage. It didn't used to be like that. Some years ago, you could sue for potential damage or the likelihood of damage, or because there are 3 nails here instead of 4. You know, these are all technical defects. They don't have resultant damage directly attributed to that defect. Now, when you allege a defect, there has to be resultant damage directly attributed to said defect to get any money. And the statute has now been increased from 5 years to 10. So they've made it tougher to collect the money, but they've opened the window longer, is what they've done. Now, if you're using a fluid applied air and vapor barrier on your plywood shear wall, in your window openings, and Prosoco and some of the other ones, Henry Corporation, Tremco, everyone's getting into the act now, obviously, because when you see something's working, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out, hey, I should be doing this too. And these guys are geared up to do it. They know all the same people that private label everything. But in any case, Prosoco makes something called joint and seam filler. Comes in a sausage. They make Fast Flash, also comes in a sausage. And they make Cap 5, the R-Guard, which is what goes over the building envelope. This treats the window openings. It treats the shear wall. The only thing you need on the window opening is a piece of synthetic moist stop, piece of moist stop PF. So a piece of synthetic Sizelcraft on the sill, and you embed that in the Fast Flash and top coat it with some more. You leave a dry flap there, so when you're coming back with your 1 layer of 1 hour paper or your layer of Tyvek, you get a positive lap at the windows. That's the only thing you need with it.
So you don't need any sort of mechanical flashing
No.
when you're using that? So you eliminate the mechanical flashing even.
You eliminate the self-adherent, although it is compatible with all self-adherents too.
I'm talking about sheet metal. So how does sheet metal?
You don't really need a sheet metal either.
Even at the 90s, because
you don't really need a sheet metal.
Really?
I would get positive slope on the window. I would shave down your sills to give you at least 1%. And you can put this product on. set the piece of moist stop PF down, top coat it with some more product, set your window. You know, and if you have a nailing fin, a pan is absolutely useless. But if you don't have a nailing fin, you can get away with that application without a pan, and then you just do your closed cell backer rod and sealant around your jams and at your head, like you normally do.
This application is self-sealing?
Application is self-sealing. You penetrate through the Prosoco, and according to the guys in the lab, it is self-healing like a peel and stick.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me get back to my main point with this, why it's so good. Resultant damage, where is it? You've got a breach in the building envelope. You've got all kinds of water running between the plywood and the building paper and the plaster, wherever your finish is. Water goes right down to the bottom of the wall and runs out. There's no damage. These guys with the clipboards and the cameras and the pocket recorders and the fishing vests with their, tools and their dental tools and their mirrors and everything else, they don't find anything. So there's nothing to find. Without any resultant damage, you don't have any money. You're wasting your client's time and money. So that's one reason I really, really like it. Is it cheap? No. Will the price come down over time? Absolutely. As more people jump into the game, and knock on wood, we still have a capitalist country. These products, right.
Good luck with that.
I can talk another hour on that alone. Yeah. Get me going. I'm libertarian. So
with this project, with the shear, because typically we got to have a little gap in the shear to let it kind of flex as it gets hot and cold and whatnot.
Sure.
And so, is there a mesh, like in drywall, that you would put, or just goes over the big gaps?
No reinforcement, if you can believe that. No reinforcement. Now, obviously, if you're going over, if you've got a base L metal, a sheet metal at the base of the wall, and it's installed against a Prosoco substrate, I feel a little more comfortable with either a peel and stick there and or some fabric there, just to reinforce the material. I mean, I have every confidence in it, but my name's on it. I'm going to call for a reinforcement there. That's probably the only instance where you need a reinforcement for it.
Prosoco?
Prosoco, P-R-O-S-O-C-O.
We do that in Northern California.
And then your representatives are going to be, roll it on.
Yeah, we did that on our last job at Hotel. And what we liked about it was that the OSB is all irregular. It sits out to weather a little bit.
Right.
And you can't get anything to bond to it.
It's done. I know.
So you just roll this out and it just covers everything up and it just saves a huge amount of time. Plus it's working on the plaster.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great.
Absolutely. So, the price will come down as more people get into it and there's some more competition. The price will come down. Hopefully the formulations will also improve over time. Most of these manufacturers always reserve the right to change any chemical formulation without notification. And that's their prerogative to do that. They do absorb a certain amount of liability, although I will tell you, the times I've seen a material manufacturer tagged for culpability in an assembly, I can count on one hand. That's why, to have the material rep involved and all that's all fine and well, and it would show to a judge that you've done everything to work within the confines of the system to render a satisfactory product or superior product. But again, the manufacturers and architects very rarely will get dinged. Generally it's the applicator, the actual applicator. The GC is going to have 15 to 25% culpability for sequencing or lack thereof, and supervision or lack thereof. The applicator usually gets the majority of it, and rightfully so. A lot of things are applicator driven. It's human. It's the human factor. Somebody's not having a good day. Somebody's tired. Somebody's hungover. Somebody's disgruntled with their company. Doesn't like who they work for, but isn't prepared to leave either. Who knows what you're going to get out of someone like that? I'm straying a little bit. Let's talk about current projects, type and size, scope. I've already mentioned the $500 million goodie. I'm also on the BAM luxury homes projects, all of them. For those of you unfamiliar, it's Bruce Makowski. He started out as a QVC guru, made the handbags, shoes, mid-tier type stuff, mid to upper tier, made a fortune apparently. Now he's a developer. To their credit, I will say their learning curve is sharply declined. They're really getting it together. Ironically enough, one of the big factors that will dictate how someone feels at their job is the availability of breaks and food. These guys have a chef at the compound. They set up a compound for every project they do. Everyone is fed. There are snacks. There are breaks. They have meetings. It's just, these guys are fantastic, and they're not contractors, but they are used to a high degree of a high expectation level from the end user, from the client. So that's translating, and they are surrounding themselves with the best possible people. They're hiring good subs. Yeah, they got Mintz Concrete doing all the work. Mintz is doing 406.
He's doing
Robert Lane.
Yeah, he's doing Pasadena.
Yeah, fantastic concrete guy.
He is great.
Fantastic. Guy's hands-on. He's there. He's got eyes on everything that's going on. That's one of the ingredients in a successful company and in a successful individual in general is surround yourself with the very best people who will tolerate you and who will spend time with you. Going back to my background, that's one of the things that landed me where I am. I'm not here by accident. I've been really fortunate enough to have a couple really, really good mentors. They appear on my CV, on my resume. Got Mark Savell in Santa Monica, one of the very top forensic architects. Very top.
What about,
Yeah, Mark Savell and I, call each other every couple days when we're in traffic, talk about our projects, this and that. He's pulled me into numerous litigation projects for both defense and plaintiff. Unfortunately, not in the same case, but that has happened. I've been on a case where I was a plaintiff's expert at one point, and then ended up defending a sub when that case closed and another one opened up. So it was interesting. So yeah, Mark Savell, invaluable to get that architectural experience. And the guy's a teetotaler. He doesn't even drink. He lives and breathes architecture, and with a focus on litigation and the forensic aspect of it. He'll sit there and just pick something apart, take it apart gingerly until he can recreate the whole scenario of how it came together in a PowerPoint presentation. And that's invaluable. Another one of my mentors I mentioned before, Ernie Orchard. Guy's got a resume as long as a boardroom table. Old school. So yeah, the best people you can possibly surround yourself with is.
1 second. Mr. Lau, could you turn your microphone off, please?
maybe he wants to say something.
He just popped back on. So I'll make a quick announcement. Hey guys, the way we're going to handle questions, so start, writing down your questions. We're going to go ahead and go down the list of attendance rather than having this be a big muddled thing where everyone attempts to speak at the same time. So basically I'll call out your name because I can see who's here. If you get left out at the end, just shout, hey, and we'll handle it that way so we can go one at a time with the questions if you have them.
You should text.
Mine's not working, but I'm texting with Jen right now to know what they're saying.
So yeah, before we get into Q&A, let me just talk about your a couple of the last items on this list. Common design-related defects. We're all familiar with Truesdale area. We're all familiar with the mid-century, single-story, little clear story on top. No one wants to see any of the roofing approaching the base of that clear story, So they set their Z-bar about an inch from the roof line. That's a design-related defect. That's invariably going to leak. There's almost nothing you can do other than extend the weather-resistant barrier, connect it to the roof, and extend it halfway up the wall, and then cover it with the plaster assembly and limit your fasteners to where they're occurring 6-8 inches above that roof line.
Notes to John Halpin to please check that detail. Thank you. That's exactly.
You've got it everywhere on that.
Tuesday, a clear story.
It's a common thing. You're always going to have aesthetics and watertight integrity bumping heads. No one wants to see any transitional material. They want to see plaster going into glass, going into steel, going into what have you. Nobody wants to see any of the flashing, and you need the flashing. You need the flashing to integrate dissimilar materials. And, I think that a role of the general contractor would be to immediately file a RFI when confronted with a design like that and put the liability back onto the architect. That'll be one of the few times that the architect would really take it in the pants if they insisted on proceeding. And then you get it in writing. You get a wet signature on that RFI that says, I understand your concerns, proceed, sign. Thank you, I'll build anything you want, as long as you're absorbing the culpability for it when it fails, which it will. Another thing that you run into that's just horrible, and ADA opens the door to this. Want the threshold to be 5/8 of an inch higher than the corresponding exterior? You're going to manage water with those sort of numbers? It's almost impossible. You would have to thicken your threshold to the point where you could hide a door pan with a 3/4 inch vertical rise at the end of it. And, you can do it. You can use an extruded aluminum threshold that will have a configuration where it will allow for the vertical leg of the pan. Another thing that happens with pans is people step on them and turn them from a pan to a horizontally placed Z-bar. What does a 2x4 cost to put inside of the pan until it's ready during construction when you got traffic? Nothing, which touches upon all of it, the supervision, all of that, the subtrades. And then trying to maintain the same height inside as outside. There's only one way you're going to do that. Pedestal paver system, to where the actual waterproofing is 3 or 4 inches below the corresponding wear surface, and you get a nice even plane. Do people want to pay for bison pedestal paving? Generally, no. Have they already designed it with that criteria? Yes. What do? Oh, let's get a real thin tile, maybe 3/8 of an inch, and then just thin set it on the membrane. Oh, is the membrane suitable for thin set? Meaning, is it Geico Western UB64 or Tremco Volcom 350/351? No, it's Geico LM60 or it's 250 GC. These are soft, rubbery type membranes. You put thin set tile on that, you're going to break all your grout joints in the first couple of years, especially if somebody's had too much turkey before they go traipsing about on their balcony. So, these are things that snowball into mega defects. You start out with a small thing, like a small lie to your wife or what have you, or your boss, and before you know it, you're chasing that lie for 6 months, for a year. Same thing with these defects. Something starts out, once you set a course of action, you got to stick to it. You don't go through a yellow light planning on running it and then lose your nerve right in the middle of the intersection. You get clobbered. So it's another one of the important things. So I always ask people, I says, well, what is the finish here? What are you intending on doing? Is that set in stone? And it's going to affect the products you use. And one thing I'm sure you guys are well aware of, no one likes to go backwards. No one likes to go backwards, and they will build a defective product before they start ripping out windows, because there's no flashing, or before they start reworking deck waterproofing or adding slope to a dead level substrate. Nobody wants to go backwards. So once you've started that momentum, beginning with a small defect or a lack of planning, it's really easy for that to snowball into a huge issue. And that's great for guys like me. Yeah, I mean, you make money on both ends. It's awesome. But I much more like to be a part of the solution than part of the problem. And when you're sitting in court with an attorney asking you the same question 40 different ways, trying to paint you in a corner, you're in a problem. You're not in a solution. There's no solution there. It's not a solution for the plaintiff. Plaintiffs is sometimes spending $1 to get 50 cents back. It's no solution for the defendant. The defendant's not going to be able to get insurance. Might go belly up. It's just not. It's not a good scenario all along or all around. And I prefer not to even do it. I try to avoid those cases. You know, I take them. I do them just to keep my resume diversified and healthy. But that's not where you want to be. And yeah, it's much better to avoid this stuff. And it's not hard to do. Again, hiring the best applicator. File an RFI if the architect gives you something that you know is not going to work. A lot of these architects, are highly qualified for design. They have a broad knowledge of all trades and all disciplines, but oftentimes they're not really an expert on any one thing. And building envelope, water intrusion issues, weather-resistant barriers, more often than not, these are things that they're lacking in. Sheet metal flashings, what they like to put on the plans. Follow smack nut. That's it. That's what you get for sheet metal.
I have a question related to that. What do we do when there is...
Please announce yourself, sir.
Matt Dugally. When you modify an architectural detail that varies from the plans, how do you close the liability gap by getting the architect's blessing on a modified detail? So in other words, just to your exact point, you've got an architectural detail that is, we know, either inefficient or deficient, and we want to modify that based on, for whatever reason. Do we have a new detail drawn and signed and blessed by the architect?
Absolutely.
Or how does that happen?
Yeah. Again, step one all goes back to the RFI. Best thing you can give your guys out in the field, one of these little metal clipboards that opens up so the wind and rain doesn't get to your paperwork, and fill it up with some RFIs. Give them about 30 of them. And you file those with the architect, and then subsequently the architect's going to issue a bulletin. And, on a custom home, on a big 10,000 square foot custom home in Beverly Hills, you might have 40 or 50 RFIs.
500.
Or 500, sure, depending on how south the thing is going. And then you're sometimes forced to work with an architect you don't know. And these are really critical roles for people to have if you don't have a relationship, if you've never worked with them before. It's borderline crazy to do that.
So we have a detail specific to sheet metal at a head flashing, let's say, and we don't believe that detail is accurate or efficient. We create with the waterproofing consultant and the sheet metal. What do we do? He rewrites a memo and we say, this is what we want, and he signs it?
You file an RFI, a request for information. You say, detail on A6.1 sheet metal head flashing, we do not believe, nor does our subcontractor, nor does our waterproofing consultant, that this is the best course of action or this is the best detail considering the circumstance. We request information from you in the form of a bulletin with a revised detail, and we are willing to meet with you on site with involved parties to that end.
What if he says, I'm not responsible for providing those details, and we say to them, here is the detail we'd like, do you accept?
That's one way to do it.
Okay.
That's one way to do it. Okay. And they go on record for either being non-responsive, if they won't issue you a bulletin and won't issue a revised detail when you're explaining to them that it's not going to work, You know, and it comes down to PMK, person most knowledgeable. And that's going to vary from project to project. Is that going to be your sheet metal contractor? It very well may be. You know, like I'll throw one out there, I like Kevin English. He's a tough cookie, he's a cantankerous guy, you know, but he won't do anything that'll end him or you up in court.
And yet here we are.
So, you know.
The only issue we have happens to be on a project he did for us.
Oh, okay. I may be on that.
Oh, you are?
He's contacted me about it. Yeah, and I'm waiting for his. It's a
It's
balcony deck, right? A large balcony deck? Yeah, in any case, yeah. Is there a gossip we can do after, when the cocktails are flowing? We can go to industry gossip. But no, that's, and again, would you get into an intimate relationship with someone that you've never met? I mean, for long term, I don't mean the weekend, but long term? No, of course not. Would you work for someone without a contract? Without what your roles are, what their roles are? You know, how many write-ups do you need to be terminated? How long is this job going to last? Right? Nobody would do that. It's insane. So you're expected to work with an architect or an owner's pet subcontractors. Hey, my cousin Vinny does sheet metal. He needs to be on the job or you don't get the job. That type of stuff. And that happens in the real world. It really does. So being able to protect yourself as a GC, because they're going to come after you first. They're going to come after you first. And you're going to have to take all of the defects, all of the culpability. I like to call it, it's like an hourglass. You know, you're taking it all in, then it narrows down, you whittle away at it, what's left, and then you spread it all out at the bottom to all your subs. So protecting yourself and mitigating that and preventing that from happening is the best. So the RFI, invaluable. And a lot of people don't even file them. They just, they complain and cry, and at the end of the day, the architect's shifted all the liability to you and your applicator. You know?
But we find that true, exactly what Matt says, is that half of these architects, it's cut and paste from 2001. Where's that flashing detail? Yeah, just put that on that page. And then, like you said, you'll get a Kevin English, and it typically is a good sheet metal guy that knows his business. It goes, This is not the way to do it. This is how I've done it 50 times before. And then you go through this whole process, just like Matt says. And the architect just says, I'm not responsible for the waterproofing. And we get kind of just caught in between.
And a lot of the architects, another thing they'll do is exclude themselves from any project supervision whatsoever. They will attend weekly meetings if you wish, if that's in their contract. They'll go straight to the job shack, straight to the trailer, won't even cast a glance behind them to see what they're building. Won't even look. That's project supervision. That puts them on the project, that opens up their liability tremendously. Let me close with liability. I'll give you a little thing that I do to limit my liability. Oftentimes architects, and I don't mean to be beaten up on the architects, but I am making a presentation to a general contractor right now and not an architectural firm. So the focus is going to be more to protect you, and I'll be right up front with that. Here's what a lot of architects like to do to a roofing waterproofing consultant. They like to dump their plans on my lap, either in the form of a series of PDFs or a link so I can upload their plans. And I'm supposed to sit at home and go through 500 or 600 pages of stuff and redline everything. Refuse to do that. Refuse vehemently. As a matter of fact, I have a disclaimer on every proposal that goes out now that says I only entertain specific questions with regards to roofing, waterproofing, and weather-resistant barriers, and review plans in person at the architect's office with the architect implementing each change arrived at. And again, entertaining specific questions. I'm not there to co-sign your plan and throw my insurance policy on the table as a money bag to be tapped. Don't do that. And then in terms of the quality control on the project, I only come when I'm like a vampire. You got to invite me to your project. You have to call me and say, James, we need you to come out and we need you to look at this, this, and this. And then I come out and I'm escorted to those issues and I look at those issues and I develop a subsequent report based on my findings and impressions with regards to those issues. Otherwise, if you're sitting in court on a project that's gone south and they say, oh, so Mr. West, let me get this straight. You had the availability to go to the project anytime you chose based on your expert knowledge base and audit the project. You could go out to the project every day if you wanted during critical assemblies and audit the project. Yet you chose not to do that. All of a sudden, I've got the lion's share of liability over the people that actually created the defects. Here's another, just a little nuance, you only go to the job when they call you. You only look at things that you're supposed to look at. That's again speaking to the roles. And a lot of the, I'm not going to name names on consultants, but a lot of consultants these days, I don't know if it's because they want more cash flow, or they want to hire more people, or they want a bigger office, or a nicer car, but suddenly they're not a waterproofing consultant, they're a designer, they're an architect. They're providing their own details on their own letterhead. I don't really feel that that's the role of the consultant. I think we have
a lot of them are doing that. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I think we have other industry professionals that should be held to the fire to provide those services. Architects draw details. Architects and designers design things and then draw the details to follow up. Material manufacturers provide details for how their material should be installed and how it interfaces with other materials and dissimilar materials. Those are the people that should do that. A consultant, in my view, should be more of a choreographer at times, getting the right people together, or working with the people that are here to ensure that everyone knows what they're doing and knows their role and is comfortable with one another, and all the liability and culpability goes to the correct pockets of people, and to provide quality control services, to come out, look at the project, look at specific things, comment whether or not that's acceptable or it's rejected. That's what a consultant should do, and I'm done. It's Q&A time. That's an hour.
So when we have a waterproofing consultant on a project, how often should we need visual? How often should we have, and at what point should we have that waterproofing consultant on site to do those inspections? What is appropriate, or what would you say would be beneficial?
A before, during, and after scenario for critical weather-resistant barriers is going to be the best course of action. You want a consultant to come out and look at, first off, what you have to work with, substrate conditions, interface to other materials, and then while the work's being done, the consultant will come out, or the quality control professional will come out, they'll look at the materials, make sure they're delivered in the, in original factory containers, check the expiration dates, log in the run numbers. If there is a problem with the material, you need that manufacturer's run number.
That's important.
Because if you have that, and they've already demonstrated failure with that run number, and you produce it, you got them. You got them cold, and you will not wiggle out of that. And if those run numbers are not recorded, and they're not recorded in a fashion where you have a photograph of that bucket on your job site, a guy with a Weathermasters t-shirt or Cassini t-shirt applying the material that's right next to it, you've got an airtight case.
That's very important for everybody to document, to have all on site. We don't need any visual. That's really important for everybody to hear that point. Make sure that when we're documenting weekly the photos of waterproofing being applied, that we have the expiration dates, the manufacturers, the specifications, the run numbers.
You'll always find a stamp there on the container.
Yeah, document the stamps of all waterproofing membranes going in and relate it to the specific people to make sure that it's not expired. That's very important.
Take a picture with your phone.
Yeah.
Send it to the office.
We do all weekly, and then at the end of the week we have an update, and in that update we upload photos every week.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's invaluable to do.
So let me ask you a question.
Greg LaFortune speaking.
what do you do about, we have, most of our jobs that we do in Los Angeles are modern construction.
Sure.
So these showers that we do are often very clean and they're hard to waterproof, basically. So we've been doing waterproof.
And there's no curb.
And there's no curb. So what do you do about that? You're going from the outside to the inside. We usually do a gutter underneath it. We have a depression for all of this.
Sure.
But what's your recommendation for materials to use for water?
How big's the bathroom versus the shower? Waterproof the whole bathroom floor, take it up 4 inches up the wall, done. Especially now that you have no curb. I was on a project, I'm going to drop a name here, so watch your feet, Maria Shriver's house.
Who's that? Is she still alive?
Anyways, one of the really well-known general contractors that begins with an F. So that narrows it down to 2.
He's not in business.
And then for the U.
Did her shower pan. Her shower pan is in her son's bathroom that has bench seating. He's the one that was dating Miley Cyrus for a minute or what have you. So full of hormones, his son there probably takes 45-minute showers. The shower's directly over her office desk, where she sits and plans her television show and everything else, It's leaking directly in the middle of her desk from her son's shower. She, to say the least, she was not happy. And you know what? There was nothing wrong with the shower pan waterproofing at all. Nothing wrong at all. But the buildup, the setting bed for the stone was enormous. It's 2 or 3 inches of a float. The curb was about 2 inches high. So the float is extending over the curb and down and onto the bathroom floor. We have a single layer of type F paper and then your tile for the bathroom floor. So all the water building up in that setting bed through the grout joints for the tile, all that hydrostatic pressure and all that water jumped right over the curb.
Oh, wow.
You don't see it because it's under the stone. It lands on the paper. The paper was just abutted to the curb. It wasn't sealed or anything.
Sure.
Water's getting right through the subfloor, coming through. No defect. There was nothing wrong. How did we fix it? We dismantled the stone from the curb, and we added a piece of stainless steel metal with a vertical rise. And then we kerf cut that piece of capstone that goes over the curb and drop that in. So when all the setting bed becomes saturated, it hits that vertical rise of stainless steel and doesn't go any further.
So a quick question, and then we're gonna start hitting questions around.
Sorry, one quick, another solution, pedestal system. Depress your slab, use a pedestal system, you can keep it perfectly straight, water goes right through to the drainage. We just discussed this.
Talking about showers?
Yeah, you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing. Because what is a shower? It's an interior balcony deck.
Right.
Is what it is.
I'm on a project right now where the condition doesn't allow for that, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out, we have one flat piece of plane that we can't depress, and we're doing the master bath on that. So the architect's gone, well, let's just put 4 drains in, one in each corner. And
Let's
so we
bring
don't have to worry
him
about
in,
it.
and
So,
in individual cases like this, we should call James and get,
yeah, we'll do that.
You essentially waterproof the whole floor, go up the wall 4 inches, and even waterproof out the door opening. Once you're applying it, it's like eating potato chips. You just might as well keep going. The cost is driven by the applicator coming to the project, assuming the liability for the project, the quantity of material, unless you're doing a football field, very rarely really impacts the cost. So, yeah, we do it all. So, yeah, next.
I have a question. So you mentioned earlier in your presentation that contractors, applicators are approved by manufacturers. Is there any place that do they actually vet them, and do they list and publish who's approved by them? If we're, let's say, interviewing a new company, an offshoot of an old company that wanted to work and they have great references, can we check anywhere if they are approved by the manufacturers, especially the big ones like Tremco?
Yeah, you get a wet signature letter of qualification from the applicator. The applicator will get that from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer will give it to him. So the manufacturer's in business for one thing, to sell product. So they'll take a chance on a new guy and approve him if he's got a good-looking resume or he came from an upstanding company. But get that letter, wet signature from Tremco, from Carlisle, from Geico Western, from CIM Corporation, from whoever you're dealing with. Get that letter beforehand. And if they can't produce it, they're not qualified to bid the project. And even if you've already let it out to them, you can pull it.
Okay.
Unless they can get that approval. Yeah.
Cool. One other question before we open it to everybody else. What happens when you have a situation, a very large area of waterproofing, you're going up in stages, right? So you're not going to terminate the entire level of waterproofing to the top of the wall in one day. What is the best way to protect that you don't get to a third of the way or half of the way, and let's say these surprise rains we've got, you get a surprise rain, now you got a breach. So how do you protect from one day to the next that you don't get a breach in your mid-level waterproofing?
You know, it almost brings you back to, I've had this happen in roofing where you tear off more of the roof than you can cover in one day, which is highly common in California. It's common practice. Yeah, everybody does it. And particularly if you have a different sub tearing it off. You got Honeycut or Bly or whoever doing the tear off, and somebody else comes in and covers it up. You can be presented with that oftentimes. In terms of fluid applied polyurethanes and different membranes like that, it'll vary from manufacturer to manufacturer what the tie-in treatment is, how to tie in an area that you've left that you have to jump back onto. CIM has one of the most stringent tie-in protocols that out there.
What's CIM?
CIM Corporation makes CIM 1000,
Oh, okay.
CIM 800, a really, really good quality urethane. But they have, if you're doing successive coats of the urethane, you have to jump on it at 4 hours. Can't exceed 4 hours when you're going on with your next coat. But if you do it in under 2, it's still going to be wet. So there's an application time there, very stringent. If you miss that time, you have to use your interlaminate primers, you have to sand it and rough it up. You have to do all kinds of things that guys are not going to want to do. And when they don't do it, one coat's not going to stick to the other coat, and it's going to delaminate, and you could have water between each of the layers. It's just a nightmare. But
Should we go to the question?
if you're in that scenario,
This is a question.
yeah, if you're in that scenario, go corner to corner, top to bottom, side to side. Be able to bite off an work area that you can terminate, if need be, with tarps and sandbags. Can't have enough tarps and sandbags around.
I have a question. Getting ready to build a basement. Mintz is the contractor. What is your best idea on concrete wall penetrations? Taking plumbing pipes out of like a 2-inch or a 4-inch pipe through a 12-inch thick concrete wall.
Leak sealing.
Where it does my work for me. What do you even have me here for? Yeah. Yeah. A dual, everything, just like I mentioned with shell and shell pools over habitable space, redundancy.
So you like
So you
the
do,
link seal?
oh, I love it.
With,
love it.
with liquid over it.
You do link seal.
Okay.
You do link seal as a primary. Sometimes even a double link seal, one on the inboard side, one on the outboard side. Closed cell backer rod, polyurethane sealant, reinforcement. Then you do the field membrane over that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Leak seal, dual leak seal, and then the liquid applied on
Yeah.
both sides.
And then also, if you're pouring a slab, like a pool slab or a courtyard slab, and you have numerous utility pipe penetrations, do a bentonite rope around each penetration prior to the pour. Just make sure the bentonite rope is a minimum of 2 inches submerged into the pour. You know, so the top of the pour is not less than 2 inches below, close to it. And that's an excellent step. It doesn't cost a lot of money. They put the bentonite rope around the pipe, and you wire it off. You take a little baling wire, tie it around, you're good to go.
We should do that for sure.
What about foam roofs? I was like, going to be a question, but I was
Yeah.
going to open it to others, so
Yeah.
Greg McFortune speaking here.
My take on SPF's spray foam, spray applied foam roofing.
Closed cell.
Again, there are advantages and disadvantages with just about anything these guys concoct to protect the building. And the SPF roofing is no exception at all. I think in areas like Palm Springs and Cathedral City and Tempe, Arizona, and Albuquerque, and areas where you have just beating sun, relentless sun, and not a lot of trees and topiary around the project, I think they're definitely an advantage. You can also create slope using the foam over an existing hot roof or an existing sagging deck. The weight is minimal. And then, the waterproofing element of these foam roofs, a lot of people don't realize, that very thin top coat on top of the foam, that's your roof. The foam's a substrate. The foam is getting you slope. The foam is providing R value. But the actual waterproofing element is going to be a siliconized, an acrylic, or a polyurethane coating on top of the foam. And your roof is only as good as that. Disadvantages of foam roofs. Flying debris like tree branches, birds, rodents, other vermin will destroy it. And once the foam is opened up and you start getting water underneath the system, you're going to have to add you're going to have to add one-way moisture vents. You're going to have to chase it. You might be replacing wood substrates, depending on
Even after it's finished, those roads?
Even after it's finished, absolutely. Absolutely.
They can get into it.
Oh, they can get into it, and a branch, a branch that weighs, a pound, if it lands just right on the foam, it's going right through it. It's going right through it. So
that sounds like no.
But if you have the what's the coating that goes on top though?
It's either urethane, silicone, or acrylic.
And then
Well, that's a rock.
They can put granule in it. Yeah, you could do slate granules or mineral granules in it. That gives it a little more resistance. But again, the force of a branch in a 35, 40 mile an hour wind falling down on your roof is going to puncture it.
I took a pen on the sample with a granule, and it was thick granules. I took a pen without it, and obviously goes right through it.
Yeah.
The point with the force of me beating.
Sure.
I took it on the granules, and it wouldn't penetrate at all.
Well, maybe they've improved them.
But
I would look at your warranty.
Big rocks, yeah.
I would look at the exclusions on your warranty.
It's a 20-year roof.
Yeah, I would look at the exclusions on the exclusion clause on the warranty. Invariably, they're going to have an axe of God, which is going to be flying branches, birds, one of God's little creatures, like an owl or whatever type of bird or rodent.
That's a big bird.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I have another question here. This comes in from Andrew Heller, Orange County. His question is in regards to flashings and compatible metals. Do you see a problem consistently with certain metals when they're laid over each other?
Fantastic question.
Great question.
Yeah, you have problems with dissimilar metals, like galvanized does not go with copper.
Mm-hmm.
Stainless steel, especially 316 stainless, goes with just about anything. But yeah, you will have that electrolysis, aluminum versus galvanized. I'm not a metallurgist or a metallologist or whatever you might call that, but I've got a layman's grasp on that. But speaking to that further, polyurethanes and some really leading brand polyurethane sealants like Sikaflex 1A, not compatible with copper.
Really?
It will degrade, it will revert, and reversion is the absolute worst thing you want to happen to your waterproofing, because the waterproofing looks good, it smells good, all of that, it was applied correctly, but for some reason it reverts back to the way it looked like in the bucket or the way it looked like in the tube. It becomes soft, loses its elasticity, and liquefies. It's called reversion. And it happens with materials under hydrostatic pressure sometimes, and it happens with materials that are exposed to either UVs or toxic soils, or who knows. But
normally used for, right? Sikaflex.
Sikaflex was the most popular polyurethane sealant used by everybody. Sheet metal subs used it. Waterproofers used it. It's a solvent-based polyurethane. So you can't use it around Protecto wrap or self-adhered materials because there's a polypropylene layer there, real thin, so it doesn't stick to itself in the roll, and you can work with it. If that solvent gets to that polypropylene, and we're talking over a period of months and even years, It causes the urethane to become in direct contact with the asphalt, and asphalt and urethane do not mix, and you'll both degrade. It's almost like if you take a fishing lure, a worm, and wrap it around a Bic lighter and keep it in your tackle box for a few weeks. Open up that tackle box and look at it. The lighter will actually be eaten away from your lure, from your worm.
Really?
Yeah. That's the power of these adverse chemical reactions.
Sure.
So copper and Sikaflex 1A, for instance, do not mix. Do not mix. You want to use a lead-coated copper or Rhine zinc. You still can't get lead-coated copper. You got to go to custom shops to have it done.
What's it?
Oh, cool.
Good.
Good. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
better.
What's your thought on Rhine zinc? Isn't that
Rhine zinc?
an issue? No.
I like Rhine zinc for protecting the plate line. Yeah, especially if your plate line is real close to the grade. If you're doing a rehab on a place and the plate line is right at grade, you need to protect it. You're going to do a double layer of peel and stick membrane or a reinforced polyurethane membrane, and you're going to cover it with a flat stock metal. Then you're going to set your wheat screed up above the plate line and your building wrap over that. And you can actually get away with that, doing that. Rhine zinc's great for that. As is stainless. I mean, I like stainless.
You can't paint the stainless.
You can't paint the
And the binder,
stainless.
you can't.
So you want to get a brushed or a sandblasted finish on the stainless so the client can live with that look. You can't paint it. Bonderized is the poor man's stainless or the poor man's copper.
Right.
You can paint it. It's going to have a little bit more resistance. At least it'll get you past that 10-year, that magic number.
Not near the ocean.
Yeah, not near the ocean.
Yeah.
No, the ocean is copper or stainless.
Yeah.
There is no other option. Yeah.
Any other questions in the room?
Let him go first. I think it's
Okay.
others should have chances.
Let's go ahead and start down this list. We've been talking a lot here. David Laux, if you want to unmute your microphone, we'd like to hear if you have any questions, Mr. Laux.
Thank you, Edward. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfectly fine.
Great. Hey, one of the things that we do quite a bit of is we kind of do a lot of design build of the waterproofing details in the field based on our years of experience and also with our subcontractors. How does that open us up to liability?
Well, you just assume the liability of the designer and the architect, simply put. So getting those changes on the letterhead of your architect in the form of a bulletin is invaluable.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah, acknowledgement. Hey, I accept this detail. This is a modification of a detail that I either did or did not provide or did not add clarification for, and based on a PMK opinion, person most knowledgeable in the field, applicator, what have you, I accept your alteration or I accept your approach for this assembly. But get a bulletin on that. Again, do the RFI, do the bulletin.
Good question.
Especially when talking about waterproofing, which is the most hot button topic in construction. Huge that those details be approved by the architect and signed by the architect.
Is that satisfactory, David Laux?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Laux?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Elise, if you can hear us, you want to unmute yourself. Elise, do you have any questions? You had a text message during the seminar about the rocks don't help either when penetrating the foam. Did you want to add to that, or did you have any questions?
She's via phone, so I don't think she can.
You should still be able to talk. No problem. We'll go on to the next person if she wants to bust in later at some point. That's fine. Let's go with John Halpin first. John Halpin, do you have any questions for us?
Wichita, Kansas.
For Mr. West. You have to unmute yourself, of course. Anita or Johnny? Assume they're all in the same trailer.
Elise said she doesn't have any questions right now.
Okay.
And Johnny and John and Anita said no questions.
Okay, very good. All right, are there any more questions in the room?
Yeah, I have one more. Same thing on the same house. We have a large structural deck.
Yeah.
So the waterproofers always like for our concrete guys to put some form of a pitch. There's
Sure.
quite a few drains.
Sure.
Do you agree with that in the structural?
Absolutely, and it may constitute a violation of the manufacturer's requirements for a warranty for the waterproofing.
If it's not pitched.
If it's not pitched. Now, Tremco, Geico Western, both have, you can get around that, but guess what? You're buying a lot more material. You're adding a drainage board. You're bringing the height up, possibly past their design. So it's something to plan for. Also, if you take a waterproofer out of his preferred scope, meaning applying waterproofing materials, you know, waterproofer's not a carpenter, he's not a concrete sub, it gets really expensive. You will end up with the use of a concrete polymer like Sikatop 122 or Sikatop 123. These are enormously expensive concrete polymer materials. Waterproofers like them because you get 7,000 PSI out of the product, and you can waterproof that same day. Oftentimes, they cure very rapidly, and they will want to use that to achieve slope. And it is not cheap at all. It's not cheap at all. So if you can get any slope in your structural deck, that's helpful.
Matt,
That's good enough.
Oh yeah,
You don't
Matt
even need to
Dugally,
say
my 19th question. What do you feel as far as value of concrete waterproofing additives such as Zypex? Do you feel that that's important? Do you think that, what do you think that accounts for?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Did you hear that, Drew? I got an excellent question too.
Excellent question. Yeah. First thing you got to bring to light is we live in Southern California, and other than high crime and predictable weather, we have earthquakes here. I know we haven't had one in a while, knock on wood, it's probably going to be a good one. Any sort of structural movement or earthquake or something like that and the concrete cracks, you've just wasted all your money on your additive. Additives have absolutely no, they don't work if it's cracked. They have no elasticity.
Was that like a thorough seal or something?
No,
It's inside the concrete itself.
I mean, they certainly have their place in the industry, their place in the market. Sometimes you have no choice and you have to use one. But you have to be careful of a couple things. Is it going to compromise the bond for your fluid applied membrane that you're going to waterproof the concrete with?
Is there compatibility issues?
There can be. There can be.
You have an example?
And even if there isn't a compatibility issue, the secondary manufacturer of the waterproofing membrane that's going on the additive can cite that as a cause. And it's up to you to prove that it isn't. So it just opens up the door to that. Coaster makes excellent additives for concrete, as does Setco.
Setco and Coaster?
Setco and Coaster. If I was going to use anything, I would use one of those two. They also, incidentally, Coaster makes the best negative side crystalline waterproofing.
That was my next question.
Sometimes you're due to proximity of neighboring properties, or there might be a house on top of the area you need to excavate to get to the wall. It's absolutely physically impossible to get to the positive side of the substrate. I always recommend a dual-tiered approach for negative side waterproofing, meaning drill injection ports every couple square feet, or as determined by the manufacturer, inject with either Setco Bentagrout, so a bentonite grout, or a chemical grout, so polyurethanes. After you're done with that, sandblast the wall or turbo grind it, and then use a crystalline waterproofing after you've patched all your ports with hydraulic cement. Also address the wall to slab detail by routing that out and packing in a metallic grout and coat over all of that. The Coaster products have an excellent track record much more so than Aquafin is another competitor. And all of these crystalline products come from Germany.
Really?
All of them. Yeah, Coaster, Aquafin, all of them. And they're not cheap. They're not cheap at all. A, they know they got you. If you're trying to waterproof a wall from the inside, they know they got you.
You got a problem.
Yeah. And two, they do have some culpability. The best chemical injection is going to be from Deneef. So that's Deneef. Mike Davis from Innovative Concrete will be your contact.
These really work.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, and they'll actually warranty you. What happens is it's grout curtaining. You know, grout injection is not negative side waterproofing, it's negative access waterproofing. You're drilling through the wall, you're flooding the space between your soils and the wall, which fans out, the material fans out, and it fills the area between the dirt and the wall with the waterproofing. And depending on the compaction and the confinement, that will dictate how close your ports have to be.
How deep are
Generally.
you when you drill?
Well, you drill all the way through the wall. You drill all the way through.
Oh, interesting.
Oh yeah, and it fans out on the other side of the wall. And now we're talking highly technical stuff now. This is the top tier in terms of technical approaches.
Get to that.
And it's, you know, Coaster has a product called the Blitz system, the Blitz 1, 2, 3. You mix this stuff up, it's hot, you're using rubber gloves. If you have a hole in a concrete wall that's expelling water, active hydrostatic pressure, it can come up to the hole, put a patch on it, hold it with their glove for a few minutes, and it'll stop.
Wow.
And then you go over it with the Coaster NB1 system after that. Again, these products are not cheap, and there's only a handful of applicators in the greater Los Angeles area that can do it. Even some of the guys that you're familiar with don't like to do it. Even some of the top tier guys don't like to do it. It's only a handful of guys that will do it.
I have a question, actually an excellent question too. Negative waterproofing when you're actually pouring a wall. So not when you have a condition that's existing. Let's say that
So
you have
blindside waterproofing.
blindside waterproofing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On lagging.
Yeah.
Is there a system that is bulletproof? Or they're all suck and there's just...
There are there are three systems you can use.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start with the bottom. ePro.
Mm-hmm.
ePro is a fluid applied, it's spray applied. It goes on your drainage board, which you've pinned to soils or you've mechanically fastened it to lagging. And all your drainage board is done. The internal side of the dimple, the depressed side, is facing you. And then they come through with a spray rig and they spray the drainage board. And then you shotcrete the wall and you're done. Okay? That's the Chevy. Moving up from there, you'll have products like Pre-Proof by Grace, which is a sheet membrane which fuses to the concrete. And it's the same approach. You attach it right to lagging or pin it, and you shotcrete over it or pour a wall against it. Moving up from there, you've got your bentonites. So, and it's the same thing you use for under slab. So Paraseal, Tremco Paraseal, LG stands for the lagging. You've got Setco Voltex, and that's CETO Voltex, VOLTEX. That's another nice, thick, heavy-duty bentonite, and that's going to go straight on your lagging on top of a drainage board.
You believe in that?
Yeah, I like those. San Francisco, where it's all underwater table, 9 out of 10 buildings up there have bentonite. That's what they're using. That's what they've used. And with what's good about bentonite, if you have to inject afterwards, if you do have a little leak here and there, you can, and they're similar materials. And they're by the same manufacturer. That makes it really appealing, to use. And then the very, very, very top of the scale, Setco, God, it's so rarely seated. We did it at Cedars-Sinai, the cancer center here, the addition. Did it with Angelus Waterproofing a few years back. But it's a it's a sheet good. It's like a PVC type material. It's a sheet good, and it has bentonite on one side of it, and the flexible, it's yellow, sheet good, and then all the seams are vulcanized. They're all welded seams, and it's done from the negative side. That's a super, super expensive system. That's going to cost twice as much as any of the aforementioned. It depends on your tolerance for failure. As it were, what kind of car you like to drive, your tolerance for lack of pickup or lack of performance. It's just, there's always things for people with money to throw at things. There's always somebody to give it to them. There's somebody to take that money and give them a product that's got the testing behind it to exceed what your normal. So.
Is it worth spending the extra money if you have the room to create separation, build your wall, waterproof it, and backfill it rather than going with a bentonite?
Always best to do a positive side waterproofing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have control of the product. You see it before and after it's been applied. The problem with blindside waterproofing is just that. It's blindside. You think you did a good job, looks good, everybody looked at it, then the guy gets out there with the hose, with the shotcrete, if he gets under a lap and lifts the lap, the shotcrete goes behind the seam, you got a breach. You got a breach.
You just don't know it.
You don't know it until you're exposed to it. It's like having a watch you think's waterproof, and somebody pushes you in the pool after a couple beers, and then you get out of the pool and you're in the sun, and you're looking and there's fog on your $10,000 Rolex. You know what I mean? And not a good feeling. So it's again, you don't know until it's exposed.
Yeah.
Same with mold. Mold is one of these big things that's fueling all these construction defect lawsuits. Very few people are sensitive to mold, but you don't know if you're sensitive to it until you've been exposed, and then you add a whole treasure chest with somebody being sick. What's a human life worth, or someone's compromised lifestyle because of being exposed to mold due to your faulty construction? An attorney can make that case all day. Even the fact that they may be a boozer and take a half a dozen prescription medications, which would be my defense, I would say, if I had to play defense on that. But,
Yeah, especially if it's the kid that's the one with the mold problems, right?
Right. Yeah, the baby.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Quick question, and maybe this wraps it up, but the CIAM 800 or 1000 in between slabs, say you run it on a floor slab, over a floor slab within a topping slab on top. Is that replace a vapor barrier or another subsurface waterproofing membrane? Or you say it's an addition to?
It can. If the millage is enough, if you're doing 90 to 120 mils with a sand broadcast on it, so you're fusing that concrete directly to it, and if it's running the whole way out, meaning you don't have exposures at the ends, where vapor can come in. And again, vapor versus water vapor is up to 1,000 to the molecules are up to 1,000 times smaller than physical water. So that's why sometimes you get these basements, you just can't get that smell out. Air conditioning is a big factor. You air condition a space, it's taking the majority of the moisture away.
Yeah.
Just with that. But, especially people by the beach, I want to run my air conditioning, want to be green and all of this, And again, with the green thing, let me just say this. The things that are the worst for the environment are the best at protecting against the environment. If it smells, if you can light it on fire, it's good waterproofing. Coal tar pitch. Best roofing material ever made. Ever. The minute the sun hits it, it starts to liquefy and melt, and it's self-leveling, fills all those little breaches. You can have a coal tar pitch roof last 50 years. The Bullocks Wilshire Center did a report for them in the late 80s. They had a coal tar pitch on that roof since it was built.
It's just the can strips in the parapets that go down.
No, pitch doesn't stay on the walls.
Right.
Because of the melting point.
Look at you with your...
Yeah, excellent.
You yeah. It's the water. It's the vodka. I've been in your steps.
Eddie, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, James, thank you very, very much for coming.
You know, we can go a little longer because by my calculations, there are probably maybe 7 or 8 people that aren't on the 405 yet.
Okay, well, we play it however you want. I think for us, we're going to wrap it up. And I'm sure people will have questions. We'd like to invite you back sometime in the future to maybe do a follow-up, and things change over time. This was extremely educational for all of us.
We can even do it on like a Saturday morning or something. I'm not close.
I think everyone would be really excited
Just to
about
have
that.
everybody. Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, and I want to make sure everybody knows that if we need to, we should be calling James when you have specific questions and not coming up with the answers yourselves. That's why we got to put up the professionals to give us these details and not take the liability ourselves. RFIs, that's a huge, huge thing for sure.
And guys, this is just the beginning of our new kind of series and modules. So thank you very much for attending, everyone. You are free to go unless you have any further questions. You can speak up right now. And we thank you very much for joining us in this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
James, so that was great.